scripture for tonight is found in Romans, and this is 7 verses 1 through 12. I'm going to go ahead and read that for us. Released from the law. Or do you not know, brothers, for I am speaking to those who know the law, that the law is binding on a person only as long as he lives. For a married woman is bound by the law to her husband while he lives, but if her husband dies, she is released from the law of marriage. Accordingly, she will be called an adulteress if she lives with another man while her husband is alive. But if her husband dies, she is free from the law, and if she marries another man, she is not an adulteress. Likewise, my brothers, you also have died to the law through the body of Christ, so that you may belong to another, to him who has been raised from the dead, in order that we may bear fruit for God. For while we were living in the flesh, our sinful passions aroused by the law were at work in our members to bear fruit for death. But now we are released from the law, having died to that which held us captive, so that we will serve in a new way of the Spirit and not the old way of the written code. The law and sin. What then shall we say? That the law is sin? By no means. Yet if it had not been known for the law, I would not have known sin. For I would not have known what it is to covet, if the law had not said, you shall not covet. But sin, seizing an opportunity through the commandment, produced in me all kinds of covetousness. For apart from the law, sin lies dead. I was once alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin came alive and I died. The very commandment that promised life proved to be death for me. For sin, seizing an opportunity through the commandment, deceived me, and through it killed me. So the law is holy, and the commandment is holy, and the righteous is good. All right, so as we get started on our pages today, I am going to be looking at some very old school flyers or handouts that I had made a while back. And you will be able to find these, I believe, right on our Facebook page. There are some files, if you look at the top, where you'd see photos and albums and units. You should be able to find some files there as well. And I do believe that these are also uploaded to our website under free resources. Now these are some hand-drawn ones that I had done when we first got started with journaling. This one's a little bit on the newer side, and this is going to look very similar to the 10-page packet that we are giving away in the month of March. This packet will remain on our webpage, but if you sign up during the month of March, if you're currently in 2020 with us, you will be able to get that automatically sent to your mail. Now, the 10-page packet has a very similar kind of breakdown for us with lettering, but it also has some practice sheets and 5 different alphabets. So it's a great resource for you, and I hope you'll enjoy that. So I thought with that being the theme for March, we'd go ahead and just do something kind of fancy with some lettering. This page here, again, is an older version found on our website under free resources and the Facebook page under files. So in this first one, really we have a breakdown of the different types of letters. Now I kind of make up my own categories, I guess, according to how I teach it. So we're going to be looking tonight, I'm going to look at some serifs, and I'm going to using 2 different words, law and grace. And for me, the law would really be great with a serif because serifs tend to be very formal. You can see here these formal letters that became very popular in our regular text, especially if we're talking about something educational or something official documents. And then I'm going to probably come down here and use something more like a script or even a brush for the word grace. A grace tends to be a freeing thing, so I want to see that in my lettering, nice free flowing. So we're going to keep those 2 things in mind, but let's go ahead and jump over here to this page. I love this sheet because on it I've got just little teeny tiny notes, and you can see how the same word just given some different details, can really be changed up according to what you'd like. And I also want to look down here, things like this, where we add in maybe some little dramatic ending points or some curls to our end points. I also love this varied level. So these are just, this is kind of a reference sheet, and this is really applicable to any font that you're using or any of your own handwriting, but there's just some ways to vary it to give it some interest. So let's go ahead and focus just on these two words, law and grace, and then I would love to be able to see how you then take this very simple page and turn it into a beautiful work of art. All right, so I have got just a plain 3x5 card. Some of you may have smaller rulers. My rulers tend to be very large. So when I'm working on the page like this, I'm going to just go ahead and get myself a straight edge of sorts. And all I'm simply going to be putting on this page is grace over law. And to me, that is really the principle of what is being said here. When the law is important, the law was there to say, you know, this is what I'm commanding of you, but it is certainly not what saves us. It is certainly not a bad thing, but it is not the point in which we've been saved. So we can follow that law to a T, but it's still not going to do us any good in eternity. And once we kind of have had that grace, that blood covering, our role is to really be filled with God's Holy Spirit and to live differently because of it. And so that's a beautiful thought. And I think that's really, you know, kind of a paraphrasing of this kind of difficult section, if you really think about it, to be able to read through. So I just want to keep it simple with that. So I'm going to go ahead and think about the word grace, and I'm going to be using some pretty fancy font. I want to have that word grace kind of overwhelming. And so I'm actually going to give myself probably almost half the page. I'm just a little bit above half, and I'm going to go ahead and just give myself a line where I envision that going. But I am going to actually drop this down a bit and draw in the bottom of that G, and that's because I am going to be using a very large lowercase g. So I'm giving myself that bottom line, just like we did here with the F. We can see the A is up, the I is down, the T is up, the H is down. And so I'm going to kind of play around with those varied levels. And this is actually called our baseline. So that's what I'm doing here. And then because I'll have most of that lettering here, I'm going to save this space for the word over. And I'll probably keep that pretty much in line with the base of this other G. Oops. And then I'm going to bring in the word law. And I want to I want to have a little bit of room here for some artwork later. I may just do some really simple little flowers or something to fill in the space behind it. So I am going to be a little more conscious of this space as well. I also would like to give myself some notes to be able to reference, and I really like that. This is one of the reasons that I absolutely adore this Bible, because it allows you to have lots of freedom for creating, but it also gives you enough room to go back in and write some notes in as well. So now that I have the baselines in here, I'm going to just give myself also a top line. We're going to start with the word law because it's going to be a little bit easier with those 3 letters. So I'm going to actually take my my straight edge here and just kind of drop it down, and that's going to give me that space that I'm looking for in between the words. But I'm also going to have a top line. And this is really great because when you have a top and a bottom line, it makes it really easy when you're doing your lettering. There we go. Make that a little darker for you. Okay, so now that we've got this in here, we're going to use some very, very basic, and I'll be using this card again in a moment for some of the straight edges. But what we're going to look at here is actually called a double down. And so this is where we're going to create, I'm going to actually use this as an example. So bringing down not just 1, but 2 of those down strokes. So in this case, we just had the 1. We're going to double this up, and it's going to create some hollow space. Another thing that we're going to think about is just spacing out. So these are very well spaced as far as being you know, this is just an example, but these letters are here just pretty basically written, and we're going to stretch them out. So what I'm going to think about is taking this piece and elongating it, because what I have here is a pretty long section, and the word grace is going to be quite large. It's also got a few extra letters, and so I want to make sure that the law doesn't end up over here. I want to stretch this out. So the very first letter that I'm actually going to do is straight here in the middle, and that's going to be the letter A. So I'm going to think about having that flat top. I'm going to bring these out a little bit wider than normal. I might be more like this for an A. I'm going to go ahead and stretch it out. Give myself a little center point. So here and here. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the other side as well. And this is a little tricky. If you have a special tool, you can get them the angle more even, but I like to just eyeball it. I'm not so picky. And then what I'm going to do is actually draw in just a tad bit darker. Actually, I might just wait for that. I'll wait to do the serifs all at once because I'll show you how that works really easy. Then I'll just come up here as well and give this just a single line across. Okay, so there's the A, and that kind of sets the tone for how much wider we're going to make those letters. So I'll go over here with the L, kind of start towards the edge. So bringing one line down, spreading it over a little bit. We're going to try to keep similar distance. That's a little bit thicker than this was here, so I might thin this up just a tiny, tiny bit. Let's do that, and I'll erase here. And then I will just kind of use this same thing, and I'm going to bring this up kind of like a little triangle piece there on the end. So that's going to all be together. Now the beauty is here, I've just had to draw two lines down in a little triangle, but the other parts of my L will be already there because of those top and bottom lines. Another great advantage. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of angle the same thing because we've got a W coming. So we're going to go ahead and do a W, down lines about the same width apart, right about there. I'm going to actually come over here. This is going to throw us for a minute. I'm going to keep this wide at the bottom because what I'll do is bring up a single line here in the middle. So I'm going to flip it over, give myself a little bit of extra space. Take a look at that. I think I'll come over here this way. And then from this, I'm going to come up very strong and just kind of do that single cross bar. You can bring it all the way up to the top if you want to. That's going to be totally up to you. Okay, so let me go ahead and I'll give us a little time lapse here, and I'll go ahead and trace this with black marker so that you can see how this is going to work. So the next word that we're going to be looking at is the word grace. And what I'd like to do with the grace is to really make it overboard with lots of curlicues. You start with, when you're adding on those extras, unless you're a professional calligrapher and you can do it as you go, a lot of times this is something that we can add on. So the biggest thing that I want to decide is that letter G, and in this case I really would like to work with more of a lowercase. It's going to be kind of a partial lowercase uppercase, but there's with the G, if you look up, I love to just look at, like, in a Google search, just say hand lettering the letter G or something like that, and it will give you just tons of varieties of different ways to produce this letter. I want to go ahead and start with that larger letter, and I'm going to kind of do this bigger cursive letter, but I'm going to give it a little hook here as well, and that will really kind of act as almost, you could look at it either way. You could look at it as a large capital G or the lowercase g. And then what I'm going to be thinking about is, here's the word over, right? So the beginning of that first line that we created, which was really right here, will be pretty significantly different than the bottom of our G. So I'm going to start here, and what I want to think about is kind of dancing these letters in different places. So we've got kind of this up and down motion It'll be a little interesting here to see what actually naturally happens, but you could definitely set yourself some different levels, and that way you can go through here and put in your letters as you wish, and you can create different sizes. So here's kind of what I'm going to end up doing like this, and that kind of allows me to dance those letters around. This is also going to be more of a bigger curly there as well on this big loop on this R, and I could bring this R down, but I've kind of decided to stop it short and allow the A to be the more fulfilled area there, the little bit thicker. The C goes up, and then the E comes down and has more of that. And this is where I want to add on these extra curls. Okay, so I might even bring this R into there. I might even have fun at the bottom, and you can just have a lot of fun with that and kind of allow that to dance around your page. Okay, so for this letter G, I'm actually going to start here with what I like to use as faux calligraphy, and many of you that follow the Bright Bible know this is something that I love to teach, but the idea of faux calligraphy is still the thick and the thin, and really it describes it right here at the top. So we'll write out our word with our regular font. We'll add a double stroke, but only on the down strokes, and then we can either fill it in or we can leave it hollow like the word joy here as well, and use that for color. So that's going to be totally up to you. I'll go ahead and work on this G here together and kind of talk you through it, and then I'll speed it up to show you the rest. So what we'll do here is kind of on the up, we'll come down, and so before we, you can follow and finish the letter if you would like, but I'm going to go ahead and just stop right there, and I'll come back up to the point in which I started to shift down, and because this is a rounded area, I'm going to taper it, so it'll kind of start skinnier, widen out, and then get skinnier again when it tapers back close. So that's going to be what that looks like as far as doubling the down strokes. Here it's going to be a little different because our G is this long downstroke, but here at the top it's going to have that flat mark. So I'm going to keep it parallel there at the top, doubling the down. But when I get closer to the bottom, this is where I will taper it back in. Because again, we'll be going up. Give us some curly cues. We can definitely go back in there and thicken those curlies up as well. That's going to be totally up to you there. And then I'll just kind of finish that G off like that. So now if I wanted to get real fancy here, I would kind of follow this around. Just give myself a little bit of thickness on these curls. It's totally up to you and how much you want to get busy into this. Something like that, and then you'll create those extra spaces. And now the fun part is we can either go back in there and create some lines or some textures. We could also fill this in with color or a gradient of some kind, or we could just fill it in black and make it look as though we really were talented calligraphers with that thick and thin line. All right, we'll go ahead and speed this up so you can see how the rest of this word is going to look. Now that we have our two biggest words done and we've used some pretty fancy fonts, which are going to allow us to do some real creative coloring or texture fills, we're going to use in this middle word, this less important word, we're going to use a very basic font, and I am choosing to use something that is very tall and skinny. So as I'm kind of bringing down my downstrokes, they're going to be very elongated, and then I'll keep the letter width very close and tight together. So OV, and then I'm going to just go ahead and, just for some character, I'm going to give this more of a lowercase e. Do that here. Kind of keep them with that tall, rounded look. Do the same thing with the R, and bring my connection point down a little lower than what would even be natural, and then bring that off. So just something really simple. You could do this with just your straight basic writing, but this gives you kind of just the focus is going to be on the words that are going to be the most important. And then of course here in this inside we can add something fun like a little green or a little banner or some sort of image. We could always go back and do a couple stamps or stickers here on either side just to give it a little extra flair. Okay, so I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial here on the lettering, and I hope that you'll go over and visit us on the website if you have not, at the brightbible.com. And when you sign up for our free lessons of the month, not only will you get those lessons sent to your email each month, this month in particular for the March 2020, if you sign up, you will have access to an automated email with a 10-page document on hand lettering, and it'll give you lots of practice sheets to be able to try out some of these fun things. And don't forget, like we said before, to go over and grab some of these older just cheat sheets that we have for you on the website under free resources, or again on our Facebook group page. So thanks so much. I'm going to be looking forward to seeing how you guys finish up your pages. I'll be sharing you with mine, what I end up doing with my background and coloring things in. So make sure you check us out on Facebook. The group page has an album just for the read through, and we love seeing what you guys do with these pages. So until next time, happy journaling.